Gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Anika Molesworth. Welcome, Anika.
Thank you, Costa. Good morning, everyone. What an absolute pleasure to be here in this very special part of the world. And Banyula Farms team, thank you so much for having us on this beautiful bit of paradise, for allowing us to share it with you. This is a place that exemplifies vision, hard work, courage, care of land. So it's very special to be here, and I feel very honoured to be currently looking at a sea of faces of people who are actively working to cultivate a better farming and food system. Because we know that farming can be difficult at times. Farming can sometimes feel quite overwhelming and daunting when we face droughts and floods and bushfires and pests. We do face a lot of uncertainties in this industry. And cynics, well, the cynics will say, give up. But cynics do not grow futures. You and I do. A fractured, flawed, but still beautiful world. The time is ripe for radical rejuvenation, a hands in the soil kind of restoration where consumerism is traded for connection, profit for purpose, greed for greenery. Could flourishing be the new survival? I truly believe so. But it depends on the hope and the courage that we show, the foundations that we sow. Cynics will say, give up. But they do not grow futures. You and I do. My name is Anika Molesworth, and I live on a farm in far western New South Wales. And I'm not talking about Dubbo, I'm talking about far west on the South Australian border near Broken Hill. And it's a place very red compared to this greenery, very different colour scheme here. I'm also an environmental scientist and a writer, and I love stories. I love creating worlds through words. I love language, and I find it fascinating the story we tell of ourselves and each other, and how that shapes who we are and the future that we are stepping into. Today I am talking about how to build a positive mindset in a changing climate. How do we cultivate the internal conditions that help us navigate uncertainty? Because uncertainty is a given in agriculture. It's not a question whether change is coming. It is, it always is. It's how do we move through that change? But before we get into the details of the talk, I would love for you to think of a place where you feel like you belong. I want you to imagine it in your mind's eye. Think of a place that you feel deeply connected to. Think of the sounds, the fragrances, the colours. A place that is both your home and your heart. A place that you could almost put your hand on that earth and feel your own heart beating. Think of it now. For me, it is this place. My home and my family are located in a land of ruby red soils and sapphire blue skies. It is a place you could walk all day and not see another person, but you would see a lot of kangaroos, wedge-tailed eagles gliding above, tiny, dainty wildflowers that form a carpet at your feet after rain. This is Willakali country, where Willakali people have lived for tens of thousands of years, alongside the most extraordinary creatures, like the barrier range dragon that scuttles between saltbush, eating the most exquisite tasting fruits like the cherry red quandong. The traditional owners of this land have lived alongside the natural world, sharing its stories of both heartache and of hope. And I pay my respect to the traditional owners of the lands we meet on today. Because these places that we feel connected to, that you imagined in your mind's eye, they nourish us. They give us energy. They also challenge us. And they challenge us especially during times of uncertainty. They challenge us to take care of them. To every generation before us, what we do could never be done. To every generation before us, how we live, not possible for anyone. Yet here we are, living the impossible. And it makes me wonder what impossible is still yet to come. We know these are challenging and complicated times, and maybe they're always challenging and complicated times, but we bend and extend and adapt to the times and make ways to achieve the unachievable in our lives. To generations before us, we are living proof that impossible is possible. And generations to come will be living proof that more impossible is still yet to come. So yes, there are days where these feel like impossible times. But remember, we are already living the impossible, and there's still more impossible to come. So how do we create the positive mindset, the inner conditions to cope with challenge? I think there's a few ingredients. One of those being connection to self and values, connection to each other and community, and connection to places that energize and nourish us. I believe in practicing gratitude. There is so much wonder and awe and beauty in this world, and being grateful of it is not a denial of hardship or dismissing challenge. It's about looking at what is working, what is beautiful, what is strong, what can be built upon. I believe on reflecting on one's personal strength and community strength. Because when we face challenge, it's very easy to go, I cannot go through this. It's too much, it's too difficult. But when we look at what we have already been through, personally and as a community, we can feel assured that we are capable. We can move challenging times together and come out of it. And I also believe in service to each other, to community, to planet, working for the greater good. Because when we work for things beyond self, we feel a great sense of purpose. So I feel like those kind of ingredients help us navigate times of challenge, especially when we're thinking about climate change. When thinking about times of challenge, the ancient Greek myth of Pandora often comes to mind. So Pandora had a jar, and she cracked it open, and out into the world flew all the miseries, sickness, sorrow, death, torment. She closed the jar quickly, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Only one thing remained in that jar, and that was hope. Now, on one hand, this is a story of human intrigue and curiosity pushing boundaries. On another hand, it's a story of power, of obedience and disobedience. But I believe that the moral heart of this story is actually around hope. That we humans always will move through life and face challenge and difficulty, but we should remember that we always have hope with us, a reason, a way to persevere. When we look back at the course of human history, we often see that greatest hope arises at times of greatest suffering and uncertainty. Why is that? Because that is when meaning is magnified, when purpose is most profound, when shallow values like wealth and status and validation no longer sustain, and instead care, compassion, selflessness take flight. The author Emily Dickinson wrote that hope is a bird with feathers that perches in the soul and sings a tune without words that never stops at all. A bird within us that sings the loudest and the sweetest songs during the storm and gale. Now, this is a story that shows us that we always, again, carry hope with us. And if hope is a bird within us, then maybe courage are the trembling hands that hold it. On the farm, hope and courage are tools as vital as sunlight and rain. They shift us from a shadow of uncertainty that can paralyze us or deny reality to a place where we are actively and consciously cultivating a future worth living in, a future worth fighting for, a future worth passing on. On my family farm in far west New South Wales, when we finally received the rains, the birds flock in their thousands. The skies shimmer with greens and golds and pinks. The land breathes again. The wildflowers carpet the ground. And this moment reminds me that life is waiting just beyond our sight. It is a reason for hope. The returning birds also remind me of something else, that hope needs courage to take flight. It needs action to take flight. On my family farm, we are living that lesson. We have set up conservation reserves to protect rare and threatened species. We are powering our home and business with solar and batteries and charging our electric vehicles off sunlight. We have opened our farm gates to researchers running trials so we understand our land better and land management of it. These are small steps, perhaps, but they are part of a bigger picture. Because across the country and across the world, I see farmers choosing courage over comfort. They are drawing carbon back into the land through reforestation and regenerative grazing. They are generating income through solar and wind projects while cutting emissions. They're cutting methane with better breeding and feeding of their livestock, and they're feeding the world while looking after it too. These aren't ideas for tomorrow. They're happening in the paddocks right now. And the good news is that when we make climate-conscious choices, we flip the problem and become part of the solution by choosing to eat local, nutrient-dense and native foods, by choosing to refuse single-use plastics, by choosing to reduce food waste, by choosing to pay a fair price for food. We give farmers the financial resources that farm in ways that heal, not harm the planet. These choices matter. Your choices matter. When we come to the end of the day, out there on the farm, we reflect on the hard work already done and we think of what tomorrow will bring. Out on my farm, far from city lights, the night sky absolutely shimmers with stars. The universe is made of stories, not atoms, wrote the poet Muriel Rukeyser, and I love stories. One fascinating ancient story that is told around the globe is that of the 7 stars in the Pleiades constellation, often describing 7 sisters fleeing from hunters. Yet if we look to the night skies today, only 6 stars shine. That 7th star burnt out over 100,000 years ago. This is a marvel of how human story endures. So what will be our story? What will future generations tell of us? Will they say that we were the generation that chose courage over comfort, action over apathy, hope over despair? That choice is ours. That moment to create a better story is now. Cynics will say, give up. But they do not grow futures, you and I do. A fractured, flawed, yet still beautiful world. The time is ripe for radical rejuvenation, a hands in the soil kind of restoration where consumerism is traded for connection, profit for purpose, greed for greenery. Could flourishing be the new survival? I truly believe so. But it depends on the hope and courage that we show, the foundations that we sow. Cynics will say, give up. But they do not grow futures. You and I do. Thank you.
The thing that comes out of that for me, Anika, is you're talking about deliberate optimism. And that in its own right sort of takes hope to another level, because you're being very deliberate in your thoughts. You have not just intention, but an action plan. And that takes away the fuzziness of just saying, well, I hope. And all of those quotes that you shared in there, this is a concept that has been with us since that first star, the first person stood under that star and hoped for the morning or hoped for whatever it was. And that idea of manifesting it through a deliberate, optimistic intention, particularly in times when our attention is being sought and distracted. And the consequence of a whole world looking for our attention is the loss of our intention. And it's a really clear thing, and you only need to see it like this. Our attention is being pushed, whereas pushed into places, drawn. But, you coming here today, you came here with intention to put your attention to these thoughts that you've shared. So any questions for Anika?
Anika, thank you. I'm still trying to recover. It's more of a statement than a question. 2 years ago, Angus and I, we ran away from home on our 35th wedding anniversary to have a tree change, basically. Before that, I said to our son, who was in his 30s, he was unhappy and he wanted to make change. And I said to him, you need to be brave to make change. And at the end of the day, we were coming into retirement, and I thought to myself, you know what? It's not only young people that need to be brave, it's the older generation as well. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. Especially in times of challenge like climate change, it can feel very overwhelming and daunting. And as someone who has studied the science and looked at the graphs, in great detail, I've had to reflect on where does one draw that courage to stay optimistic for the future? And it is from my home, the land that I'm so lucky to call home, because during those drought times, gosh, it is challenging, it is heartbreaking, it is gut-wrenching, it is soul-destroying, and then the rains come and the wildflowers bloom and the birds return and the zebra finches nest, and that just, fills me with such energy and hope. And I draw upon that, and I think of it, I recall it during the tough times, and it's those places that we cherish, that, thinking of that connection and why we value it, that challenge it is asking us to look after it. I think it's really important. And as Costa said, you know, there's a lot of distractions these days. There's a lot of devices that are trying to draw us apart and draw us away and fragment and all of that. And I think we do need to actually come back to that connection. What is true? What is real? What gives us energy and nourishment?
And, you know, it's clearly about the story. And I think what happens when we're going through difficulties, but also when there is that fragmentation, we don't tell our story. We actually don't manifest it and share it and polish it and amplify it enough. And, you know, when you think about being on the land, you have a story every day. Every day that sun rises, there's something happening. As you said, the birds are coming back, the water's doing this, the wind is changing. Like, that story. And, you know, I live in places where people are yearning for story, like just real story.
Yeah.
And you all have this opportunity to tell the story of your land every day.
Yeah. I think farmers have the best stories to tell, yeah. So,
Please thank
everyone.
Anika.
Thank you.
Couldn't have finished on a better point. Authenticity, that's going to be the big point of